Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world, and welcome to today's DevOps.com webinar, brought to you by Techstrong and Trilio. My name is Cody J. Brown. I'm the host of Techstrong Learning. We have an exciting webinar ahead, but first I have just a couple of housekeeping notes to cover. First, today's session is being recorded. So if you miss any of our discussion or you'd like to rewatch or share with a friend, the on-demand recording will be made available shortly after we conclude our live session today. If you have any questions, we would like you to go ahead and send those in using the Q&A tab, which can be found on the right side of the screen. It's also where you're going to find the chat tab, where we want you to engage with each other, engage with us. Just let us know your thoughts throughout today's program. And finally, before we close out, we will be giving away 4 $25 Amazon gift cards, so be sure to stick around. So our topic today is a framework for GitOps app recoverability with Red Hat OpenShift and TrilioVault. And joining me is Prashanto Kochavara, Director of Product at Trilio, and Christian Hernandez, Senior Principal Technical Marketing Manager of Cloud Platforms at Red Hat. Prashanto and Christian, thank you both so much for being with us. Prashanto, I'm going to let you go ahead and take it from here.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. A very warm welcome to all of you. Today, we are going to be talking about implementing a resilient framework for GitOps application recoverability with Red Hat OpenShift and TrilioVault. I am Prashanto Kochavara, Director of Product, and joined with me is Christian. Christian, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, Christian Hernandez, Technical Marketing Manager here at Red Hat.
Thank you. And today we have an action-packed agenda where we are going to be talking about market trends around GitOps. We're going to be introducing a few products. We're talking about Kubernetes practices on a whole. We're going to talk about the OpenShift container platform with the inbuilt GitOps engine. We're going to talk about TrilioVault for Kubernetes as the product, and then we're going to talk about GitOps and TrilioVault together as to the value that it brings to you. And then we'll have a demo as to the use cases that we are talking about. And then finally, we'll wrap it up with a Q&A and conclusion. So with that said, let's jump into the market trends. So what is GitOps? GitOps, based on this definition that you see in front of you, is a paradigm or a set of practices that empowers developers to perform tasks which typically fall under the purview of IT operations. GitOps basically requires you to describe and observe systems with a declarative specification that eventually form the basis of continuous everything. Now, obviously, this may sound a little complex, but the overarching principle of GitOps is that you basically have a single source of truth for your application deployment, your application configuration, application resources, all within Git. And basically, it's through the Git interface or the Git server that you manage your entire application without really touching the Kubernetes cluster directly. The idea is to have a single source of truth where everything can be managed much more efficiently. And obviously, you can provide a lot more automation in a complex environment for Kubernetes where everything is broken down into an object. Now, next, we'll talk about some of the observations or some of the things that we are seeing in a Kubernetes-based environment in terms of the different personas and what are their resiliency needs and objectives. So on the extreme left, we have the code developer. Here we are calling the code developer Lisa, who is responsible for writing the code application, ensuring that the application works correctly, has been tested efficiently, and is very interested in the success of deploying into production. And testing the production data becomes a big need for her. Lisa works with site reliability engineers like Brian, who practice the GitOps approach very, very diligently. They focus on taking all the the applications or the code that has been written by Lisa and then running that code and those application components within the cluster. Ensuring that the application is pristine from a security perspective and has the best availability from a resiliency perspective as well are the kind of items that Brian has at the top of his mind. When we move a little bit more onto the ops side, we can think of Rob, who is more on the ops SRE, or we can say a platform engineer. Rob is responsible for building out clusters and providing these clusters to the development teams to to engage and build their applications and services. Now, Rob also is focused on cluster uptime, but he's looking at the entire cluster holistically. If any application crashes at any given point in time, he wants to have the capability to recover in case the development team is not available. At the same time, performance and overall reliability or resiliency of the site is also top of mind for Rob. And then finally, we have Jane, who you can think of as the IT director or the business manager, who is focused more on obviously the operation side of things, but also on the overall cost savings or the cost related items that are involved in an IT infrastructure. And obviously, business continuity is top of mind for her as well. So that kind of brings us into a very good point where we have this framework of GitOps where you want to make sure that everything is a single source of truth, and then you have all these different personas working with that GitOps mentality or model to ensure faster development and delivery of the applications while ensuring that it's all done in an efficient format. Now, what I'll do is I'm going to hand it over to Christian to talk more about the OpenShift container platform and the GitOps aspects of it.
Thank you, Prashanto. So OpenShift Container Platform. So OpenShift Container Platform, quite simply, is anytime someone asks me, is that OpenShift Container Platform is an opinionated distribution of Kubernetes. So what does that mean? Many times when people are deploying Kubernetes, we've noticed that a lot of people in the industry need to choose different tool sets in order to accompany Kubernetes, right? No one ever ends up with just vanilla Kubernetes. They grab other things from the CNCF. For example, they need some sort of a networking solution, CNI solution. They need some sort of storage solution. They need some sort of application delivery solution. They need some sort of security solution, and on and on and on and on. It goes to where they have this little snowflake Kubernetes distribution. So what we at Red Hat done with OpenShift is that we've taken an opinionated approach, and we've collected a suite of tool sets to develop a Red Hat OpenShift. So these tool sets are things for IT operations that make IT operations easier to manage the platform, things to empower developers so that way they have tool sets in order to deploy their applications, to be able to scale as well, and also things that are proven for businesses, right? Things that are collated and things that we have seen out in the industry that are stable and that are trustworthy in order to deploy your applications and manage those applications at scale. Next slide, please. So when we built Red Hat OpenShift, we built it with scale in mind, and we built it with portability in mind. So what does that mean? So we take this opinionated approach out and scale it out whether you are running on-prem. So you can install OpenShift on bare metal, on vSphere, on OpenStack, anywhere on-prem, and also out to your hyperscalers. So things like Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Azure, Google, IBM Cloud, and now more recently, Alibaba Cloud as well. And what this gives you is a consistent container application platform across your entire environment. So meaning that if you are deploying your application to on-prem, it's the same behavior and same experience to that of deploying in the cloud, right? OpenShift gives you that consistency across all your clouds. So operations team can write their automation that fits across your entire infrastructure. So whether you're moving applications between on-prem to the cloud, to the hyperscaler, your operations have that same experience. And that also extends to the application developers, right? Them deploying their applications and them developing their applications is consistent. It's the same. So this gives you kind of a hybrid cloud solution, and using OpenShift as the foundation for that. Next slide. So if you've read Forrester's Wave, multi-cloud container development platforms, the Q3, we have large market share, right? And so large market share gives you the trustworthiness that this is a stable platform that Fortune 500 companies trust. That gives you that stability while also giving you the ability to scale, right? It also gives you the ability to develop rapidly. You have that stability at the core while still being able to improve your time to market for your applications. Next slide. So now I'm going to hand it back over to Prashanto to talk about TrilioVault for Kubernetes.
Thank you, Christian. So talking about the TVK product, which is the acronym for TrilioVault for Kubernetes. Firstly, it's important to understand why a new style or a different data protection product, right? So Kubernetes as a platform is very different architecturally, right? It doesn't follow the same legacy VM-based architecture, no monolithic applications. The applications are actually highly scalable, automated, change their footprint very often. So as a result, the legacy technologies that were doing data protection are not going to be able to support the new style of the new architecture of the applications, and also the new mentality and the philosophy in which these applications are getting built by the dev and the ops teams together. Now, let's kind of go through the features of TrilioVault for Kubernetes. So what the product focuses on is capturing the data, metadata, all the Kubernetes objects, whether it is at an entire namespace level, or if you're just capturing a Helm chart or a direct operator, or capturing an application based on labels. So no matter how your application has been deployed, TrilioVault has native capabilities to support all of those. Now, what we've done is we've packaged it and built the product, as a cloud-native solution. So it is, certified to run on any Kubernetes distribution. But we have taken one step further with the OpenShift landscape by aligning with the OLM framework. The OLM framework basically is a framework where you are which you basically align to. And if you do that, you are available within the operator hub, which is the marketplace for Red Hat OpenShift as a solution. So not only are we available as a Helm chart, but we are also available within the operator hub for OpenShift via a single click install. The other aspect of the product is that every operation within the product is a custom resource definition. So whether you want to create a policy, you want to create a backup repository, or you want to create a backup, do a restore, everything is a custom resource definition. That means it's fully embedded into your kubectl management philosophy. And to make things even better, Trilio doesn't have a separate CLI to manage or maintain at all. It's everything is done through kubectl. Even plugins that we provide are based on Crew, which is a kubectl packaging on top. From a compatibility perspective, we leverage CSI to talk and communicate with storage. So as long as the underlying storage has a CSI driver, Trilio will work out of the box with it. Along with that, we allow users to save data in NFS-based repositories, S3-based repositories, and we've actually added support for Azure Blob as well. Considering we are cloud native and we build according to CNCF standards and work across CNCF distributions, you can run TrilioVault against in any cloud against any distribution as well. And we continuously ensure that the product goes through multiple certifications through Red Hat and IBM to make sure that we are putting our best foot forward and providing that peace of mind to customers as well. Now, speaking more about the features, there are additional features that we provide. For example, if you want to take application consistent backups, we have this concept of hooks, which can run a kubectl exec against the pod and container of your choice. We also provide the ability to do transformations. Transformations are extremely powerful as you are migrating applications from one cluster to another cluster, because these transforms allow you to edit and manipulate the YAML files before they get restored. Along with that, we are highly data efficient in terms of how we do our captures. So because of that, the backups and restores are super fast. And then we also have support for ecosystem products like Prometheus, Grafana. We have our own dashboards for Grafana that are available directly from the Grafana project page. We also have our management console, which is highly intuitive with simple click-driven workflows, which provides application discovery and monitoring as well. As part of the management aspect, we'll see in the demo as well that Trilio is also embedded into OpenShift or the OpenShift management console. So, if you wanted to manage Trilio through OpenShift, you could do that as well, so that everything is under a single pane of glass. And then finally, from a go-to-market perspective, there are a lot of demos and videos and test drives available for prospective customers to take a look at directly from the Trilio website. And then we also have a freemium model that we follow. So you have a license that you can get for 30 days unlimited use of the product, or you can get a license forever, but it will be limited to 10 worker nodes. And then we also have the enterprise license model, which is for a custom number of nodes, vCPUs for a custom amount of time. So what is it that TrilioVault allows you to do? So this diagram, I really like it because it helps explain exactly what the TrilioVault product enables you to achieve by use cases, right? So no matter what your application is, or your application, whether they're defined as namespaces, labels, and operators, or independent objects, you can use TrilioVault and capture all of that from any namespace in cluster one, move it into a backup repository, and then from that backup repository, restore it or recover it into either the same cluster that you had captured it from into another namespace, or a completely different cluster as well. So naturally, what is enabled over here is simple backup, restore, rollback capabilities. You have disaster recovery capabilities. You have migration capabilities. You have application mobility capabilities. If we think about the initial slide of the developers like Lisa wanting to let's say test with production copies of the data, you can use Trilio to actually, take a copy and bring it into other environments to enable those kind of use cases as well. Now, what we've done, with the Red Hat ecosystem or Red Hat OpenShift specifically, is we have integrated extremely well into all the different aspects of the OpenShift container platform. So as we've already mentioned, it's a single-click deploy from the Operator Hub. We have, full management capabilities through the OpenShift console itself via dynamic forms. And then you can also use the YAML workflows if you prefer that. Also from a OpenShift container storage, or now it's called ODF, we have out-of-box integration via CSI. So no configuration required as long as it's an OCS system. Trilio will recognize it and do its operations accordingly. Now let's kind of drive through these use cases that I was talking about. Now, from a day zero perspective, again going back to the Lisas of the world who are the developers, test dev CI/CD is extremely important. So with the Trilio platform, you can take a environment and recreate that into any other cloud or any other Kubernetes distribution as well, however you need to. So that is the overall, test dev CI/CD aspect. You can have OpenShift running on-prem. You can have OpenShift running in AWS. You can have OpenShift running in Azure, whether it's Rosa or Arrow, and you can, scale your environments. You can do test dev activities. You can pull your production data, bring it into your test environment, and ensure success of the delivery of your services. From a day one perspective, this is when you are actually, let's say, running in production, making sure that you are protecting your infrastructure components, whether it is the GitOps pipelines, whether they are monitoring and monitoring tools or logging tools, all of that can be protected. If you are interested, certain industries require the running state of the application to be captured as well. Trilio can enable or can help you ensure and meet those compliance needs as well. And then finally, if you want to take an environment and do pen testing, security analysis, forensics with that running state, you can do that very, very easily too. And then finally, the use cases that typically data protection products are known for, application backup recovery, multiple application backup recovery through disaster recovery planning. And then finally, thinking of the business leaders who are concerned about cost, migrations from one platform or one on-prem environment into the cloud environment and vice versa can be achieved as well. And then all of this is also encompassed in a tight security band, because Trilio also provides a lot of features around ransomware protection and recovery, where we actually take we actually capture backup data, and then we scan those backup images and the data that we have to ensure that they are clean from any malware or any kind of malicious activity. So with that said, let's dive into the crux of the conversation, where we should understand how GitOps is embedded within the OpenShift platform. And to cover that, I'm going to pass it back to Krishnan.
Thank you, Prashanto. So let's talk a little bit about OpenShift GitOps. So what is OpenShift GitOps? So earlier I talked about how OpenShift is an opinionated distribution of Kubernetes. Well, OpenShift GitOps follows that same paradigm. Actually, it follows the same paradigm as all our layered products on top of OpenShift, is that an opinionated distribution or opinionated deployment of something. In this case, OpenShift GitOps is an opinionated distribution of ArgoCD. So things that OpenShift GitOps gets you is the multi-cluster management and configuration with GitOps, automated ArgoCD install and upgrade, opinionated bootstrapping. So that way our developers don't have to think about how to bootstrap their application onto the platform using GitOps, and analytics, right? Analytics, everyone wants to know about what's going on. This is very important as well in the cloud native architecture, microservices, where your application can be distributed across multiple nodes. You want to get that insight as well. So OpenShift GitOps is a layered product on top of OpenShift. It's a batteries included distribution, meaning that there's no need to pay for anything else with OpenShift GitOps. It comes out of the box. ArgoCD comes out of the box with OpenShift, fully supported with your OpenShift platform. Next slide, please. So I talked about how ArgoCD is the core of OpenShift GitOps. So what is ArgoCD? So ArgoCD is quite simply a GitOps tool, right? As the name indicates, it is a continuous delivery, continuous deployment tool, meaning that it takes part of your CI/CD pipeline, but does not replace it. As the name indicates, it takes care of the CD aspect, right? Where the CI happens elsewhere. So the idea behind ArgoCD is a reconciliation loop. So what does that mean? So a reconciliation loop that ArgoCD uses is that it monitors your Git repo, right? Since it's a GitOps tool, you point it to a Git repo. It monitors that repo. It'll detect the drift, right? So it keeps your desired state. It keeps that desired state true onto your cluster. So anytime there's a configuration drift, ArgoCD will reconcile that, making sure everything's in sync. And so I always make the analogy of having ArgoCD be like a thermostat, right? You set your temperature to what you want, and the thermostat takes care of the rest for you. You don't have to touch it. ArgoCD is the same way, as you set your desired state in Git, and it monitors your cluster to make sure that your desired state and your running state match. Next slide, please. So with ArgoCD, and specifically OpenShift GitOps, it allows you to have a flexible deployment strategies, right? So there's many ways to slice the cake, as it were. to be able to get a deployment strategy that works for you and works for your environment. So there's different methods, and all of them are supported from central hub, right? So you have like a central hub and spoke kind of model where you have ArgoCD on a cluster, but it's also managing the deployments on multiple clusters spread across multiple environments, right? And so ArgoCD can take in multiple repositories and make sure those repositories are deployed and in sync across multiple clusters. There is the clustered scope, right, or the pull method, where there's an ArgoCD instance running on every cluster, meaning that instead of having a hub sort of thing, you kind of have like a fleet where there's an ArgoCD instance running on all those clusters that you have. And this is what we call clustered scope, because there's a single Argo instance running inside the cluster, taking care of the cluster itself, right? And it's usually, here it's depicted as pulling from one repo, but you can pull from multiple repos to take care of that cluster as well. And then we have application scope. This is more of the multi-tenant design for those that are using OpenShift in a multi-tenant way. Is essentially a similar model to the cluster scope, except that it's application scope, meaning there's an ArgoCD instance, not necessarily per application, but per application team, right? So this is kind of multi-tenant design aspect of it, where there's an ArgoCD instance that takes care of one or many namespaces, and another application team has their own ArgoCD instance that they may or may not know about. This gives you the ability to have a true multi-tenant, and this is really the true power of OpenShift GitOps, where all of that is automated for you, right? There's tool sets with OpenShift GitOps that allows you to have easy management of multi-tenant ArgoCD instance. Next slide, please. So I'll actually hand this over back to Prashanto to talk about how to use these together. Right now, we're getting into the actual power of using these technologies together.
Perfect. Thank you for that, Christian. So yes, now we've heard about TrilioVault protects apps. You heard about GitOps and the value that GitOps brings to a Kubernetes-based environment. Now, how do you put or use both of them together? Now, in the interest and in the philosophy of shifting left and making sure your security aspects are taken care of, you can also stretch these boundaries naturally and for the right reasons, to include resiliency as part of the developer, as part of the developer operations itself. So what you can actually do with TrilioVault, because we are completely built as a Kubernetes native solution and run as regular YAML files, you can actually have your application deployed and protected from the day it is deployed, and have a continuous protection schedule around it as well. So that's highly powerful. From a resiliency perspective, from a SRE perspective, you don't have to worry about, hey, is my application protected as an afterthought, but it's going to be always protected because of the policies and the way you're building these applications themselves. The second aspect of TrilioVault and GitOps is protecting the GitOps infrastructure itself. Let's say you lose your ArgoCD instance, or whatever you had created with ArgoCD and however you were managing it. Yes, you can definitely leverage your HCD backup, which is something that Trilio is going to be providing automation as well by the end of the month. But along with that, you also want to make sure that you have granular control over the GitOps environment or the namespace in which that ArgoCD instance was running, because it may be that you by mistake deleted the namespace, or it may be some other corruption issues for which you need that granular control. So with Trilio, you can totally enable both these kind of use cases, which we are going to cover in the demo, and which kind of brings me to my next slide. So as part of the demo, there are two use cases that we are going to be showing. One is protecting apps as part of the GitOps pipeline or the GitOps process. Here we'll use a stateful workload like Postgres. And then once we have our ArgoCD instance with the Postgres application created, and obviously it's being backed up as part of Trilio, what we'll do is we will show resiliency of the GitOps instance or the ArgoCD instance itself by deleting the namespace and then recovering it. As part of the environment that we're going to be using, we're going to be running this on an OpenShift 4.9 cluster. We're going to be using TVK 2.7.1 from a backup repository perspective. That's going to be AWS S3. And then storage, the cluster is running actually in a Google platform. So we're using the Google Cloud Storage CSI driver. In today's demo, we are going to be covering two use cases. The first use case is to show how TrilioVault can be used within your GitOps pipeline to provide data protection for your application right from the time it is deployed. And the second use case is going to cover resiliency for your GitOps infrastructure itself. So what you see in front of you is a OpenShift 4.9 cluster. And in this cluster, we have two operators that are installed across all the namespaces. One is the TrilioVault for Kubernetes operator, and then the second one is the GitOps operator powered by ArgoCD. Both these operators are directly available from Operator Hub and are certified as well. Now, next what we'll do is we will launch the TrilioVault management console. We have a one-click install into the OpenShift environment. All routes and services, pods are automatically created, which will help launch the application by just a single click. We leverage the OpenShift authentication mechanism directly, and so it's single sign-on as well, and no other work needs to be done from the user's perspective. So this is the TrilioVault management console. We will look at this much more in detail once we start the operations. But for now, we'll go back to our OpenShift console and we will launch our ArgoCD environment as well. Now within this ArgoCD environment, what you see is we have one application cluster configs, which is already created, but we will be creating another application as well, which will be the Postgres application. The repository that we'll be using for the Postgres application is here. We have two directories, MySQL and Postgres. This is the one we are going to be focusing on. As you can see, we have the YAMLs to install the application. And at the same time, we also have the Trilio YAMLs, which will protect the application right from the time it is deployed via a policy, and it will continue to take backups of it at a daily schedule, which has been defined within our backup plan itself. Now, going back into our ArgoCD environment, what we can do is we can start creating our Postgres application. So name the Postgres project default. We'll say auto create namespace. From a repository URL perspective, we will copy our URL over here. And then path will be Postgres because that is the folder that we want. And then namespace will be Postgres again. Directory recurse. And what we'll also do is we'll add some retries in case there are any kind of delays with a CRD becoming available. So once I have created this application or configured this application, I'm going to go click create, and what should happen is it should start pulling items from the repository and start deploying them into the cluster, the application, as well as the Trilio backup YAMLs. I'm going to go ahead and click create. And right now it's not yet sync. We had set to manually sync it. So I'm going to click on sync over here. Make sure that all these objects are the ones that I want. Click on synchronize again. And now it will start pulling all those YAML files and start applying them into the cluster. So as you can see, the Postgres database is getting deployed. The pods are coming up, and then the Trilio pods and the Trilio backup pieces are also getting created. We will confirm this on the OpenShift side as well. We'll just change our namespace to Postgres, and we look at the pods. We can see that these pods are still coming up and getting into a running state. Once they do get into a running state, the Trilio backup process will also start getting triggered, and it will start capturing this application. Okay. What we should see here now, as soon as the application is up and running, we should also see the Trilio pods getting created, which are going to start protecting the application. So we'll just give that a few more minutes, and that should come up soon. There you go. You can see that the Trilio pod to do the backup has already come up. This is the MetaMover copy, so we are capturing all the YAML files. We will confirm this from the Trilio console as well. Go into the monitoring aspect, and you can see that there is one backup over here, which is already in progress. I can click on that. This is the Postgresful backup that we are seeing in the OpenShift console, in the Argo console, and obviously in the Trilio console as well. So what we'll do is we'll just give this a few more minutes. It will take about, let's say, roughly 3 to 4 minutes to complete. So we'll just let that go on. We're currently in the data snapshot and the upload phase. This is where the data of the Postgres database is getting captured into a external bucket. We can confirm that these items are also happening on the OpenShift side. Right now, the data mover pods are coming up. Once they come up, they will start copying all the data in. We can go back to the OpenShift console and just confirm that the pods are running. Once the backup is complete, we should see all the Trilio pods go away, because the successful backup means that there's nothing left to do, and we just clean up all the resources that we had created. There you go. That should mean that the backup is now complete. We can confirm that on the Trilio management console as well. Everything looks great. And on the ArgoCD side as well, things are looking good. It's just updating itself, but everything should be up and consistent for us now. Next, what we want to do is we want to get into our second use case, which is showing resiliency of our GitOps infrastructure. So in order to do that, what we'll do is we'll take a look at the GitOps namespace. So there are a bunch of different items that are created here by the operator. So it also has all the data of the applications that are within ArgoCD. So what we're going to do is we are first going to go and take a backup of that namespace itself. See, OpenShift GitOps, going to say create backup. We don't have a backup plan, so we'll create a new one. Just name this plan DevOps. Target, I'm just going to select one of the targets which is available. Okay, that looks good. So once the target is created and everything is good, you can click next and create. So what it's going to do is it's going to go ahead and create the backup plan. Once the backup plan is ready, we can select it and then trigger the backup as well. Now that the plan is ready, I'm going to click continue. I'm going to give this a name. Webinar demo Argo. So now we're going to create the backup, and again, as we had seen earlier, we will go through the process of doing a backup of this entire namespace. Again, we should see the same activity happening on the OpenShift side as well, where the Trilio pods will be coming up and performing the backup of the namespace itself. You can confirm the progress on the TrilioVault management console. Since this namespace does not have persistent volumes, it's just going to be a metadata capture, which is still going to be valuable because it has all the application data that we have created. There you go. The namespace backup is complete. It's available. We're looking good from a resiliency point of view now. What we'll do next is we will go and just confirm everything is still good over here. but now we will go ahead and simulate a disaster. So I'm going to go into my namespaces. I'm going to click on GitOps. I'm going to take this entire namespace and I'm going to say delete namespace. Okay, so on an OpenShift cluster, if you delete the namespace, what will happen is that the operator that had been installed is automatically going to recreate this namespace with all the different parameters and the pods and configurations that are required to run ArgoCD again. However, this is going to be a brand new instance of ArgoCD, so your applications that you had protected and you had created through ArgoCD, they are not going to be available anymore. We'll give this a few minutes for the namespace to be recreated, and then we'll confirm what's happening on the Argo side. In the meantime, we can just click on this and we can see that Argo is not available anymore. So I'm just going to close this and we'll go ahead and continue monitoring when that namespace comes up again. And you can see the OpenShift GitOps namespace is getting created. What we'll do is we'll go back to the pods. We'll look at the GitOps namespace and we can see that the operator is getting it back up again or recreating the ArgoCD instance. Everything seems to be running. We should have cluster ArgoCD out here again. Clicking on it, let's see. Just give this another minute. There you go. As you can see, ArgoCD is up again, but there is no application. So you lost all your data that you had created. However, we had taken that backup with Trilio. So let's go into the Trilio console and recover that backup directly from the target or the backup repository. So first, what we're going to do is we're going to click on targets. Now, in the targets menu, what we'll do is we'll go into the the backup repository where we had taken the backup of the GitOps namespace, and first we'll launch a browser into the backup repository so that we can see all the backups that have been taken. And now, just looking at the date, okay, plan.devops is the one we had taken. So I'm going to look at the backup over here. We can see that it's available. We can view metadata. We can see these are the different objects that have been captured. Going to say restore. Just going to give this a name. Webinar restore. Namespace. We can use the OpenShift GitOps. Skip already exists. We don't want to overwrite things that have already been there, but we just want to make sure that the applications are recreated. I'm going to click next. We can also transform the components if you want to edit the YAML files. You can even exclude the resources if you want to, and hook configurations as well, but we're not going to use any of those for now. Just going to click save. And here, again, we should see the overall restore process getting triggered, where first we'll actually validate all the data on the backup repository, which we call the target, and then we'll start restoring those objects. I'm just going to move into the ArgoCD. It happens pretty quickly. That once the restore completes, you should see the applications back here again. So I'm just going to wait on the screen for that to complete. Just take a quick look. Okay, it's on the validation step, so that should happen pretty straightforward and pretty soon. And there you go. You can see that your applications are coming up again. They're getting synced into this environment, and the same status that they had before the entire namespace was deleted. So you can click on this. You can see the same Postgres application is here. You can go back to your application menu, and you can see the cluster configs also there. So everything is back up and running again correctly and smoothly. On the Trilio side as well, you can see it has confirmed that everything is up and available. From a monitoring perspective, we can see the environment is looking clean. One backup, one restore, exactly what we perform. On the OpenShift side as well, everything is looking fine again. Our Postgres application is still protected. It's still running over here, and as we had said, we have as part of the backup plan that was created, it's also going to start protecting it on a daily basis. So we just confirm that once more. And what we'll see is that if you go into backup recovery section, go into the backup plans, the Postgres backup plan was not only just deployed, but is also protected via a policy. So with that, I conclude this demo, and we can move on to the next pieces. So now, in conclusion, I'm going to pass it back to Christian to talk about the benefits of Red Hat and Trilio together.
Yeah, so Red Hat and Trilio together makes time to recovery really, really fast, right? And so not only that, you can do things like CI/CD testing, test a dev to have an exact copy of one environment to another. Like I said before, backup recovery, disaster recovery, when you need to migrate applications from one cluster to another, making that process a lot easier. You get the single pane of management with OpenShift using the operator framework, having the ability to manage everything within a single interface makes things easier for management. And you can have these click-driven workflows without the constant need to manage YAML. It's a certified operator, both by IBM and Red Hat, meaning that if you're using Trilio and OpenShift GitOps together, you are completely under the supported umbrella and having the backing of both Red Hat and Trilio. You also get the the multi-tenant aspect of it and the self-service aspect that you can pass on to developers or tenants onto the cluster. Next slide. So this also gives you the ability to have to have the cloud native data management, right? That Prashanto discussed earlier about day 0, day 1, and day 2. Have the ability to right from the get-go being able to be protected and to be able to rapidly migrate and deploy applications using exact copies. Next slide. And with that, I think we are done with the presentation today. Thank you very much, Prashanto.
Thank you, Christian. And yes, for all of you who are interested in learning more about Trilio, you can go on to trilio.io. You can watch demos of the products. You can, test drive some live scenarios, and you can also take advantage of the freemium model that we have and download a free trial and get started. So with that, we conclude the presentation. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and we'll take your leave. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, Prashanto and Christian, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us and putting together this demo and presentation and sharing your expertise with us. I'd like to quickly remind our audience that this session was recorded. So if you happen to miss any of our discussion or you'd like to rewatch or share with a friend, the on-demand recording will be made available shortly after we conclude. You can also find it living on the DevOps website at devops.com/webinars, and be sure to look in the on-demand section. So we do have those 4 $25 Amazon gift cards to give away. Our first winner is Carl K. Our second winner is Nicole B. Our third winner is Harris A. And our fourth and final winner is Brox E. So to the 4 of you, congratulations. Please keep an eye on your inbox to claim that gift card. But if you don't happen to receive that email, check your spam folder. So I'd like to thank Trilio for sponsoring today's webinar. I'd like to thank Prashanto and Christian once again for joining us. And before we close, I'd like to thank you, our audience. We really appreciate you taking time to hang out with us today. Please just take one extra moment to fill out a brief post-webinar survey that should pop up on your screen here in just a moment. But otherwise, we do hope to see you at an upcoming Techstrong Learning webinar. Everyone, have a great rest of your day.